I think what we're charged to do, having been rescued, I think we're charged to do what's been done for us, and that's to meet people where they are, to love people as they are, and then to walk with them. Yeah. We don't leave them. I say often, we can point somebody to the cross. They might be changed. They might go and be changed. But when we walk with them, we're both changed. Yeah. So we meet them where they are. We love them as they are. We don't leave them. We walk to the foot of the cross with them.
Welcome back to another episode of Iron Sharpens Iron. And this may not make the final cut, but I got to make a statement I want to point out that I am not wearing the official Iron Sharpens Iron collared shirt that I've worn for every single episode. But we're branching out, so we'll see how this progresses. But welcome back to Iron Sharpens Iron, where we want to see God revealed and his character magnified and him glorified by his work in just everyday people's lives. And so we're here with my friend Jimmy, and I have heard your story once intentionally where we were sitting down, and but many times because your story really is wrapped up into where God has placed you now. And I love it. And so I'm glad that you're here. I want people to hear it. We have a lot of people in our congregation that I think know your story, but we also have a congregation that is growing and it's new. And I'm even praying that there's people that don't know our congregation that could hear it too. And so I don't know where we want to start, but welcome, Jimmy. And yeah, I'm excited.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here too. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love my story too. At least
that's awesome.
At least the God good parts of it. You know, there are some times there that certainly in the middle of them would never have said I love it, but looking back, kind of like you said, being able to look back and see God's hand on certain times or leadings that at the time I had no idea. And then ultimately him using, really truly giving meaning to causing all things to work together for our good. Right. You know, so even those bad things, even the wrong choices, those paths that at the time I thought were right, you know, that ended up in not so good places. Yeah. We were joking earlier. Just I don't claim to be an expert or an authority on anything, but I know my story pretty well, and that's pretty cool. So grateful for the opportunity to share some of it. So
yeah. So where do we start?
Well, long time ago. No, I'm a local guy. I was born up in Charlotte. My dad was just back from Vietnam. Mom was from the area. Dad's from here in South Carolina. After Dad got out of the military, he went into law enforcement and pursued a long-term career in law enforcement. So every time he'd get promoted or something, we'd move. So there was a lot of moving around the state, never outside the state. So I've been here. Talk about our growing body. I'm probably a small minority of those that are originally from the area.
That's true.
That are here. But yeah. So this is home, and I've got a younger sister, and so we moved around a whole lot, and I include that part, and I say this to just kind of tie into some things later. With them moving around so much, there was always this new kid at school or new kid in things, and with that came a never quite fitting in. This sense of maybe having to prove myself or whatever. With some other influences in my life, there was just this constant feeling of not being good enough. and a lot led to that. There were some influences there. A lot of the folks that I was around, and some influential people in my life that just kind of led me to feel like nothing I did was good enough. Now, I will say that I want to be careful how I say certain things, because I want to honor certain people as well as I say these things.
Absolutely.
But I do feel like I kind of grew up, and I can joke about this now. I grew up in a setting that created or produced in me this sort of egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
Okay.
And that's a really crazy place to be.
Yeah.
I had a mom that nothing I did was wrong. I could do no wrong in her eyes.
Yeah.
And then again, other influences, not so much. I didn't feel like I could do right. And so that sort of bred that feeling of not being good enough or being too good for something.
Yeah.
Mom had us in church, and I knew of God, and I believe there was a genuine relationship fairly early on. And even in high school, I was the president of the youth group and all of that. But as I'll talk about in a minute, some other things had entered the picture as well. But back to those feelings of inadequacy and not being good enough, I knew God, but since I had these other feelings, I felt like these people that are making me feel this way here, maybe God has those same sort of attributes.
Right. Yeah.
And so I did. I projected the way I was treated or received or loved or not loved or whatever by people. I put that on God, and I felt like God loves me because He's supposed to. The song tells us that He does, but He probably doesn't like me a whole lot because I don't fit in. I'm not good enough. So so that was something I wrestled with for a long time, and into high school, still carrying those kind of tough to fit in, that mindset. Found some things that helped me with some of that, and the primary thing was alcohol. I was introduced to alcohol at an early age. I say introduced, I found it really. I discovered it. Neither of my parents drank, so it wasn't common in the house. Now, I did have both grandparents on both sides were alcoholic and had seen some of that, had two uncles that had just horrible struggles with alcohol and just wreaked havoc on the family. So it's crazy that I ever even tried it, but I did.
Do you feel like you were aware of the damage that you say you saw it, like at that age when you started to dabble? Were you aware of?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was definitely a realization of, hey, this can lead to some bad places. Yeah, but there was also but not for me.
Right.
You know, and
their consequences were divorced from your actions.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I can do this. I can handle this. And especially when I started, there started to be some perceived benefits from it. Right. When I did fit in, or when I was cooler or funnier or more charming or whatever. Right. So I entered into a relationship with alcohol that became a long-standing relationship. So I was living sort of this double life. By the time I graduated from high school, I was drinking every weekend, and got off to college and drank as much as I possibly could. So early 20s, I feel confident. I was full-blown alcoholic early 20s. Yeah. I didn't do well in college because I went to the Citadel down in Charleston, which is, at the time, there was at least enough in me that thought I needed some discipline. I needed some structure that might keep me from going down a path that's not good. Well, I got down there and found some ways to get around that discipline and structure and everything. And so it continued to get worse. And I'd started this pattern of doing pretty well. And I was a good kid. I wasn't into a lot of bad stuff. I drank, but everybody around saw me as a good kid and had a good reputation, I guess, but it started to go downhill, and I started to develop this pattern of just letting people down and breaking promises and gosh, the unfulfilled potential, that and in certain cases I heard it from others, the potential you have that you're wasting or whatever. So I left school and came back home, and Dad, having been in law enforcement, I felt like, well, that's what will win approval if I do that.
It's still driving you.
Yeah, absolutely. The seeking that and the need for it. I, to some extent, still struggle with that today. The need for approval, the need for affirmation. But so I figured, well, I'll go into law enforcement. I had done some internships while I was off at school, and I had a job waiting for me as long as I graduated, and a great job. Not that what I went into wasn't a great job, but wasn't exactly what I'd planned to do. I went into, applied and became a South Carolina state trooper. Was for a period of time the youngest commissioned law enforcement officer in the state.
Okay. Which
is probably not a good place to be for a young guy with a huge ego.
Right.
I was assigned down to Myrtle Beach, which isn't a good place to be for a young, ego-filled alcoholic. So I worked hard, but I played hard too. And that's what I'd seen with some folks growing up. I saw a lot. I was around, Dad being in law enforcement, I was around a bunch of law enforcement guys, a bunch of SWAT team guys, and all of that.
There's a culture there.
There is.
And for a reason, because it's a high stress job, and you're looking for a way to relieve that stress. And
very much so. It's a work hard, play hard mindset. And so all those guys were like big brothers to me, and looked up to them. And I kind of fell into that same pattern. I worked hard and played hard. In the meantime, while back at home, I was at a friend's birthday party, and I developed this habit of finding the prettiest girl in the room, and I was going to at least talk to her, and found the prettiest girl in the room, and we hit it off, and we'd gone to high school together but didn't know each other real well. I asked her out a couple of weeks later and took her hostage. That was Julie. We dated for a while. We were together every day for a while, and got married not long after. And
how old are you at this point?
I was 20. I was 20 when we met.
Okay.
And got married when she had turned 22. I was still 21.
Okay.
And so, like I said, took her hostage and moved back to Camden. Still on the patrol, and I thought, I developed this pattern of breaking promises and all of this kind of stuff, but I'd also kind of said, well, it started in high school. Well, if I go off to the Citadel and get structure and discipline, I'll be okay. Tear down that wall.
Yeah.
Go home. I'll go into law enforcement. Everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Tear down that wall. Break more promises. Get married. Surely things will change now.
Right.
All I did was add somebody else to the list of people I was hurting, and eventually have a child. Surely that will change me. And again, added somebody else to that list in that path of destruction.
Yeah.
So we did. We moved back to Camden, stayed in law enforcement. Eventually left law enforcement. Around 96, I felt like there was something I probably needed to make some changes. I went to a treatment facility and stayed sober for about 6 months, and I didn't do anything I was supposed to be doing to stay sober, and went drinking, and for the next 5 years, it was worse than it had ever been before. I didn't know that I could get any lower than I was, and I've heard said since that I didn't know rock bottom had a basement. Once I was there, I didn't know I could go any lower, and I did. Yeah. I was off the rails. Julie had gotten to a point where she'd had enough. When Kelly was born, I spent the first couple of weeks of her life on a bender and just didn't see him. And for a couple of weeks was really kind of separated from him. So that's what led actually to the first treatment. But that period, I mean, it's just a dark period. Yeah. And I got to a place where I didn't want to be here anymore. I was done. And I'd run that whole time from whatever God had been out there, whatever God I was somewhat introduced to or had some kind of relationship with early, I'd run, because if I couldn't be good enough, why even bother?
Yeah.
I carried that mindset for a long time, and I ran hard and I ran a long way.
And that if I couldn't be good enough, why even bother? It goes back to that feeling as a child. It's like, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And we just track that all the way through. It's like, okay, so that's, we project onto God. You mentioned that earlier, and that's so common. We project all these things onto God that aren't true. And then we make these choices based off of that.
Yeah. And it's such a dangerous place to be, in that if I can't do it, why even bother?
Yeah.
It's so dangerous, especially when we're wrapped up in destructive behaviors.
Yeah.
So I got to that place. I didn't care whether I was here or not. I wanted to die. I was too chicken to take my own life. I was afraid I'd mess that up. And so I would pray at night, God, don't let me wake up in the morning. And then I'd curse him in the morning when I did. So finally got to a place that I had the bridge abutment picked out that I was going to drive into, and never could yank that steering wheel quite hard enough. And something finally clicked. Just kind of a side story. I just think it's important. When I wasn't a huge NASCAR fan, but we would get together. It was a reason to drink and party and whatever. Right. So we'd get together and watch the races. When Dale Earnhardt was killed at the Daytona 500, something in me clicked. And there was a very real, I don't know if it was, I know it was of God, but I can't describe how this thing came over me. But there was this very real awareness of, is this the legacy you want to leave? Life can be taken that quickly.
Yeah.
If it were to happen to you, is this what you want people to remember you for?
Yeah. And because the method you were thinking was the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I hit my knees that night.
Wow.
And begged him, either God, if you're there, if you're real, either kill me or help me. And I expected to wake up dead because I didn't think he was going to help me. I thought I was beyond help. Or again, he didn't like me enough to help me, whatever it was, but I didn't expect there to be help. And part of that prayer was also, God, I've run so far from you. I can't come back. I don't know how to get back to you.
Yeah. And
I think for the first time ever, I felt the presence of God that came in the form of just this embrace that said, you don't have to.
Yeah.
All you have to do is turn to me. And I did. And while it wasn't easy, he removed the obsession. He removed those desires. I got sober, went to treatment.
How old are you at this age?
31.
Okay. Right.
So there'd been about 15 years total.
Yeah.
But 10 really, really hard years.
Yeah.
Of that lifestyle. And it wasn't just the drinking and drugs. It was the whole lifestyle. I mean, I gave Julie every reason in the world to leave me. She'd have been fully justified. Now, keep in mind too, neither one of us believers through all of that. But this year we celebrated 32 years of marriage.
Praise God.
And that is such a testament to God's grace.
Yeah.
him extending his grace through broken, flawed, even unsaved humans. Julie's grace to me. So
there's a piece there that I think sometimes we forget is even when we're away from him, we're not even part of the family yet. Even when we're away from him, his fingerprints are still on our story, preserving it for this future redemption that he has in store. And that's something, because he was walking with you guys, because like you're saying, there's no reason she should have stayed.
Right. Yeah. No reason she should have stayed. No reason I should be here.
Yeah.
The things I did, the situations I put myself in, the choices I made, all of those. There's a path that seems right to man, but its end is death. Yeah. There's no reason I should be here but God.
Yes.
And so I did. I got sober in AA after I came out of treatment, went to AA, and I had gone before, and there was again ego filled. The first time I went in those rooms and thought, well, all these people that have been here a while, they'll eventually ask me how to do this thing, because I'll get it, and which proved a horrible disaster, trying to do it that way. But there was something different this time, and I know what that difference was. It was a dependence on God. Now, when I got into AA, admittedly, I still wasn't fully in. I knew now God was doing something in my life, and I worked through the 12 steps, which I believe are divinely inspired. I believe they're a great blueprint for anybody struggling with anything. But the result of having worked those 12 steps, the 12th step is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, as the result, which means it's almost like this equation, and the outcome is a spiritual experience. And I can say that I had that. I had a spiritual experience, and this God that I had been somewhat introduced to, had run from, and had now embraced me, became very, very, very real to me. So after a period of about 6 years in AA, doing all the right stuff and sponsoring guys and all of that, kind of one foot in, one foot out, Lord finally got a hold of me and said, I saved you for so much more. Yeah. And that's when I truly, truly surrendered and rededicated, if you will, my life, got baptized, and the rest is sort of the other side of the story.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. Before we move to that part, I think it's important to point out, because you had an experience with Jesus that changed everything, but there's still a progression. We're still being sanctified. So it's not like, so for someone hearing your story to go, all right, I've done that. I've had that experience with Jesus, but I'm still struggling with this. I'm still, the message that you walk away with is what? As you look at that journey, what would you tell them?
It is that. It's that that there is a process that, while for some, maybe for some I know, I've seen it, things change immediately. Yeah. They change.
We serve instantly. A miraculous God.
Absolutely.
And there are times where he chooses to radically, it's done, it's gone. But that's he also chooses not to do that for everybody. Right. And so can I go to something else and I'll come back to that. So I've said a lot recently about recovery being this journey. I've got several different analogies of what recovery is, but recovery is this sort of journey from where we are and what we believe about ourselves to this place that God has prepared for us and what he says about us, the truth about who we are versus these lies that we've believed for so long. Yeah. So that being the case, if we're headed to a place that he's prepared for us, we're not unlike the Israelites who came out and they're getting ready to go into the promised land, but he didn't give it all to them at once. Yeah. He gave it to them little by little. And I don't know, if for those of us that
don't have that instant miraculous change. I think it requires the little by little, because I don't think we could handle it all at once.
Yeah. That's God's faithfulness.
It is. It's a testament to him preparing other parts and working in other places, so that when we do enter that place that he has prepared for us, we're able to, we're capable, we're able to receive it, whatever that is. And that's true and lasting.
Yeah.
Versus, I think, when we rush into things and we're given things that quickly, it's runs the risk of being fleeting.
Yeah. I love the analogy you just shared, because even as you're sharing, I'm like, that's what it means to be a Christian. I'm a recovering slave to sin.
Absolutely.
And it's the same process. It's like, that's beautiful. I love it. Yeah.
So, and I go back to the lifestyle. It was those things, the alcohol, the drugs, the pornography or whatever. There was gambling, there was just all kinds of stuff in there. All those are symptoms.
Yeah.
There's a deeper issue that had to be dealt with. And that's what that process was. That process was identifying what that deeper is. The start of that process is understanding that I have an issue.
Yeah.
Understanding that I have a problem. Right. Next, that I can't fix a problem with the same mind that created it. Yeah. I need something outside of me to help me with that problem. And that answer is God. And I need to just let him do it. So that's the start. Yeah. But then we move into this process of understanding who God is and understanding who we are. The things we've done, taking ownership of the things we've done, ultimately making amends for the things we've done, asking God to remove the defects of character in us.
Yeah.
All of that's preparing us for this place that he has prepared. And it is that sanctification process.
Yeah. Yeah. What did it look like in that process? You mentioned making amends. What did it look like for you in your marriage? And
it was tough.
Yeah. Right.
It's a tough process. Again, I'll go back to something. Secular programs, and I got sober in AA. Alcoholics Anonymous led me to a relationship with a God that I would have never had elsewhere. But it was the God of the Bible that I entered into that relationship with, not some nebulous higher power.
Right.
Without God, without Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I'm not capable of doing a moral inventory.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of approaching people in a way that honors God and honors them to make amends.
Yeah.
So first I have to recognize those places that I've wronged, and then go into it again. Me on my own, I can't do that. I'm not equipped for that. My ego will not let me do that.
Yeah.
So there is just this almost a begging of God, clothe me in humility because I can't do this.
Yeah.
But so that being said, there is a process, or there's a piece of it that's having a genuine conversation and saying, I am truly sorry for the things that I've done. And I think as important, if not more so, is a daily living.
Yeah.
I want you to see how sorry I am that I've done these things. By the way, I'm gonna live going forward. And that's the part where I need the most help and have to die to self. So it's a tough thing to do. It's hard to say, I really, really, really screwed that up.
Yeah.
It's also hard to I can't say that I dealt with this in a big way, but it's hard to go into something not expecting them to receive it well or whatever. Right. You know, I have to go into that.
Yeah. No expectations.
No expectations.
Ready to whatever the response is.
Right.
Totally awesome or worst response ever. It's like that I still have to do this. And yeah.
Yep. And so their response is not the part of my recovery.
Right.
It's me making that, doing that thing. And so, and there are some, there are amends that we can't make. Maybe the people aren't still around. And
right.
There's a, I can't go into it making amends to make myself feel better. You know, it's at someone else's expense. I can't, I just can't do that. So it's
even as you describe those processes, what starts bouncing around in my head is our hearts are desperately wicked. You know, who can know it? And in the midst of that, use the phrase, but God, it's like, I can't even imagine trying to go through that process and not have the waters get murky and muddy because of competing desires in my heart. If not God working in that process to shift and transform my motivations. And I just don't even know what that would look like without God.
Yeah. And again, back to the process and to the even to the order of the steps. And we have to have this relationship with God before we can start that process. We have to make that searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. How do we even know what moral is if we don't have this true north? If we don't have this compass that points to Him. But then, and after that, we list our shortcomings, and it's God removing those that enables us to then be able to go into those amends without the expectations, because it removes the ego, it removes the pride, the selfishness, all of those things. If we've done that, to the best of our ability and trusted God with that process, the amends is easier. It's not easy.
Yeah, right.
But it's certainly easier
and
doable. And you said, the heart is wicked. So often, the worst advice ever, trust your heart.
Right.
Follow your heart.
Right. Follow your heart.
So
wait, do you not know my heart?
Don't do that.
Yeah. And then we also trust God at work too. So in this process, you're like, okay, I'm submitting to this. God's at work in me. I got to trust that God's at work in Julie too. And so tell me, where in this process does she become a believer?
So one of the things that I recognized early on, and I think this was God doing some things in and through me that I wasn't able to do, wasn't able to recognize. I was able to say outwardly to whoever would listen that when I got sober, Julie was as sick as I was, if not sicker, due to prolonged exposure to me. She had all of this stuff that she's processing through. So an incredible testament to, again, God's grace and His faithfulness and all. She was all in, whatever we have to do as a family. We had Kelly's 6 years old by this time. And whatever that looks like, whatever we have to do, and she was all in. She's always been incredibly supportive, but she was
just
there.
For the record, and she's a good woman.
She is,
Amen. We just get that on the record.
Yes. Yeah. And again, God's grace that we're still together. I outmarried my punt coverage. Admit that, recognize that, and grateful for it. So she's always been incredibly supportive, and God was working in and through her, and she was a part when we would do things, as a group. She was always a part. at that about 6-year mark when I said the Lord finally got a hold of me, we went to I had a friend who was giving his testimony at a small church in Camden, and he invited me to come, and I went, and there were 30, 40 people there, and there was something in that group of folks, and I said, I think we found where we're supposed to be. And I just went with my friend that day.
Yeah.
I went back and told Julie, I said, we're going to go next Sunday. We're going back. The part I didn't tell you is that Julie grew up Mormon.
Right. Okay. I remember that. Yep.
So I grew up somewhat connected to the Methodist Church, but Julie grew up, family's Mormon. She'll tell you she wasn't super connected, I guess. But we get plugged in this church and just hit it off with everybody quickly. Very soon after I got baptized, started a recovery ministry there at the church. By this time, we're several years in. I forgot a key part. The week after I got back from treatment, we found out Julie was pregnant with Karis. Mm-hmm. God's timing is perfect. I don't think we would have dealt with it well. We would have handled it well had it been even a week prior, that we found out. So her name is Karis because there's a reference there in the Greek to that meaning grace and the gift of God's love.
Okay.
But it's also a derivative of Kairos, which is his perfect timing, that time when God moves. And so that's why we named her Karis. And he was starting to move. Again, this is when I first got out of treatment, so he's starting to move.
Yeah.
Even then, I was listening to WMHK, the Christian station, and that's where I heard that. So again, I wasn't fully in, but he was moving and working. So Karis, who's now 21, has never seen me take a drink. She's never seen me in that place. Wow. But so we all got connected, and by the time we did that, Karis is 5-6 years old, so she's being exposed to it, growing up in it, and after about a year in it, because of the Lord, the work the Lord was doing in me and through me, Julie made this public profession that having seen what He did with me, and I had the privilege of baptizing her, then Kelly. Yeah. And then Karis.
Yeah.
So
and this kind of drove my curiosity and even asking about that is, what did that feel like? Because your story is one filled probably with regret and missed opportunities. And then God graciously gives you that moment. Take me there.
Yeah. I don't know that I can do it justice. I make a point anytime I share my story to include that part, the part of Karis's, us finding out about Karis and her name and then being baptized. Go to one of my other definitions of recovery is to return something to a state of usefulness. I spent a long time being useless. And if that's the extent of my usefulness, just those three.
Right. It was worth it.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But He's got so much more. I mean, He has done so much more than that. But
praise God. Yeah.
So
it's awesome. So now He does have more, and He has had more. So now we're moving into this other phase of, all right, I want to be a useful tool. I want to be a sharp instrument. What has that been like? What has God been doing in that? And
so the recovery ministry launched, and we started Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christ-centered 12-step fellowship. Served there for quite some time and launched several groups, and God moved and worked through that. Had the privilege of being a state rep, so I got to serve other Celebrate Recovery groups in the area. Then about, that's just been 15 or so years ago now, had the opportunity to come on board with the Providence Home, which is a transitional housing facility for men dealing with substance abuse and maybe coming out of incarceration, a lot of homelessness. And even that's a great testament to God's faithfulness. And really, because when I found out about the job, they technically had stopped taking resumes, and they'd already had their few their few candidates, and the director graciously agreed to meet with me. And
all right, one more.
So and I kind of went into it thinking, well, I'm going to be cool, but no expectations. And sure enough, he allowed me to serve there, and so for 9 years, served the men there at Providence Home, and again, I think I was maybe some use to them. I think I was a blessing to them, but I was blessed by that time more than I could ever be a blessing to others. And so we're always in process. Yeah. Right. So that it really just solidified this idea of service, especially to men in that place. So 4-ish years ago, had the opportunity to come on staff here at Calvary Chapel Northeast. I came on as what was supposed to be sort of pastor of outreach and recovery and restoration ministries. Moved into the associate pastor role and enjoyed it. I love serving the body. I love serving our pastor and supporting him. But recently have had the opportunity now to move back into that role of being focused on restoration and recovery ministry. What's happened over the last few years is a little over 2 years ago was introduced to a program called Reboot Recovery. Had been looking into some trauma-informed stuff and recognizing the deep connections between trauma and addiction and destructive behaviors. So wanted to figure out how we could maybe connect. And I was actually first drawn to it because of their service to first responders. But as I'm looking through that, they come out with this trauma reboot, which is recovery for everybody. So we started just, kind of said, well, let's see where it goes. We started the trauma reboot groups here at CCNE. And so over the last 18 months, we've had 125 or so go through that. It's been amazing. And it's been just so what I thought at the beginning was, well, we'll just see how it goes, has turned into something that it's just been an incredible tool, an incredible environment to see God work. We created a space. We helped create a space for God to work and deliver people from the bondage of trauma and all that. And I was telling somebody recently what I love about recovery, substance or destructive behavior recovery, and tying it to trauma recovery. Substance or destructive behavior recovery is recovering from the things that I have done, situations I put myself in, the things I've done to others, the things I've done to myself. Trauma recovery is responding well to the things that were done to us. Right. And they're both so connected. Yeah. They're both so, there's so much a part of both that is the lies we believe about ourselves, the not good enough, the not worth it, not worthy, or whatever those lies are, to who and what God says about us, the truths of who we are according to Him. Yeah. So again, they're so intricately connected. So we started that. We've continued that. We've got a course starting again coming up. Now I get to do that also with, we're connected with local missions. Yeah. So with folks dealing with homelessness and other issues. We're doing the trauma recovery course. We launched back in September Recovery Church, which we're doing here. We meet on Monday nights, and so we get to bring folks from the mission here, and we're able to serve not only those folks, but folks in our body dealing with addictive behaviors and destructive behaviors.
Because there are Christians sitting in the pews, and this is their life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Recovery Church is really designed to be a bridge between 12-step community and the church, but I think it's as much so a bridge between the church and the 12-step community.
Yeah, right.
There are a lot of folks sitting in pews on Sunday morning thinking, I've done all this, I've read all the right stuff, I've listened to all the right sermons, I've done all of this, but I'm still believing these things, and I'm still caught in this destructive behavior. What do I do?
Yeah.
And
then the pressure of, I'm a Christian and it shouldn't be this way.
Right.
And so now, I'm going to do this alone because I'm not going to break that mask.
Yep. And what we ultimately want to do is create a safe place for all of that to happen.
Yeah.
I think what we're charged to do, having been rescued, I think we're charged to do what's been done for us, and that's to meet people where they are, to love people as they are, and then to walk with them.
Yeah.
We don't leave them. I say often, we can point somebody to the cross. They might be changed. They might go and be changed. But when we walk with them, we're both changed.
Yeah.
So we meet them where they are. We love them as they are. And we don't leave them. We walk to the foot of the cross with them.
Right.
And that's what we want to do with Trauma Reboot, with Recovery Church, and with what we do in all our ministries at CCNE. Those are just two examples of just sort of different settings for certain issues. But it's where the Lord's called me. It's my Acts 2024. It's the ministry that the Lord Jesus gave to me.
Right.
That setting to testify to the gospel of His grace.
Yeah.
So,
and I love that it's the redemption of your journey. So your passion, His ministry and purpose for you is your journey redeemed, and the boldness on your part, but the submission to God to go, okay, I'm not gonna. I guess the piece there that I'm leaning towards is sometimes when when that's our story, whether it's trauma we've created or received, there is a place that we want to move ourselves and remove ourselves from it, and there is a piece that in the process God really does make beauty out of ashes, and there is a redemption thing that can happen. And your story is evidence. It gives glory to Him in doing that.
Absolutely. That moment when I felt the embrace, and I look back now, I certainly didn't think it at the time, but I look back now as I say, there was somewhat this conscious, God, I can't run all the way back to you.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. He ran to meet me.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, for so many of us, but I obviously could see it in my own life, it's the story of the prodigal. And at that place where I was at the end of myself, all I had to do was turn to Him, and He ran to meet me.
Yeah. He was waiting. He was looking every day.
He was.
When's my son coming home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I share my testimony, part of it sometimes is kind of this different view, maybe the view of the Father as it relates to His Son, and ultimately it's all because He loves me.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna run to you because I love you. I didn't give up on you because I love you.
Yeah.
I didn't turn my back on you because I love you. I'm not going to forsake you because I love you. Yeah. And if you leave 10,000 times, I'm gonna I'm going to welcome you back 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And I'm going to run to meet you because I love you more than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw a big party. So,
yeah. Because I love you.
Yep.
Yeah. It's so good. Jimmy, thank you for sharing that. And my prayer truly is that this will encourage somebody. And I just kind of feel moved as the end of our discussion here is and we haven't done this before, so this is new, and I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just wondering if you could just look into the camera, and what would you say to the person that maybe they're a believer and they're feeling like they're in that spot and they don't have the courage to change. They don't feel good enough. Maybe they're not a believer. It's like you've lived this and you work with these folks that are struggling in that. It's like, what would be your call to that person? And I mean, just do it. Yeah. Call that person right there. I'm praying that there's someone right there.
Yeah. Wherever you are, whether you're a believer, whether you're not, whatever that thing is that has you in bondage. And if you're anything like me, you know that you're in bondage to it. Maybe you're at a place that you can't imagine doing that thing anymore, but you can't imagine living without it. What I would tell you is that there is hope. As long as you are drawing breath, there is hope. You don't have to continue in that thing. You don't have to be alone. No matter how alone you feel right now, no matter how desperate you are, you don't ever have to be alone again. Desperation can actually be a gift, because if we allow it, that desperation will draw us closer to God. And when we know that he has run to meet us and he'll do it every time, that's when hope starts to be seen and starts to be felt and starts to be even received. So again, believer or not, there's hope. You're loved. You're worthy. You're good enough. And there's a life that's so much better for you. All you got to do is just turn, and God's going to meet you where you are. So.
Yep. And we see it because you're sitting right here.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Amen.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Love you, brother.
Love you. Thanks.